Good morning, everyone. Welcome to a webinar from YASH Technologies and AWS. We will give two more minutes for rest of the members to join in and start at 11:30 sharp. Okay. Hello, everyone. My name is Ashish Maheshwari. I'm Vice President at YASH Technologies, responsible for establishing AWS and GCP cloud practice. I have 22 years experience in multi-cloud consulting and managed services, having successfully led large transformational programs for enterprises across the globe. Prior to YASH, I've led various roles, including sales, pre-sales, solution consulting at Google, Microsoft, AWS, and Oracle. I'll be a moderator for today's session. Before introducing our speakers, I'll quickly go through a couple of housekeeping activities. First, today's webinar will be recorded, and the link will be shared with all the attendees later this week. All attendee microphones have been muted by default. If you have any questions for our speakers, please type the same in the Q&A section on your control panel. Your queries will be answered at the end of the session. So let's get started. I'm delighted to introduce our panel for today. Our AWS partner, Steven Mustafa, who's Partner Manager, Solution Architect Manager, Middle East, Turkey, and Africa. Steven, over to you.
Greetings, and it's a very, very fine morning, and thank you very much, Yash, for hosting me for today. It's my delight to be here today. As mentioned, my name is Steven Mustafa. I am the Partner Management PMSA, Partner Management Solutions Architect Manager for the META region, Middle East, Turkey, and Africa. And I'm very, very delighted to bring in my 24 years of experience with this thing, working with the channel partners and actually dealing with customers at the same time for their own betterment.
Thank you for introducing yourself, Steven. We also have Rakesh Kumar Jain, Vice President and Head of Infra Management Services at YASH Technologies. Rakesh?
Very good morning to everyone. I'm Rakesh Kumar Jain. I head the Cloud and Infra Services at YASH Technologies globally. I'm the business owner from a cloud and infra standpoint. I come with 25 plus years of experience managing large programs in the past, the transformation, and I work with CXOs to enable their transformation journey to the cloud. Thank you so much.
Thank you for your brief introduction, Rakesh. Let's move to our discussion and get this webinar started. Most of the organizations today have started understanding the value of cloud better and are ready to explore the transition of their workloads from their on-premise data centers to public cloud. There have been multiple ways in which these migrations can be accomplished. Question for you, Steven.
Yes, sir.
Does AWS have a standardized or a recommended approach to consider, say, a multi-phase migration?
Very, very good question. And the short answer is yes. Okay. An expression I like to use in this case in North America is like slower is faster, in the sense that you're doing the heavy load upfront with the planning phase. And then from there, you're able to actually progress with a successful migration towards the end. Generally speaking, when we're talking about AWS's recommendation is you start off with something called an assess, okay? And from there, you're using tools to find out what it is that you want to migrate and what is available for you to migrate and so on and so forth in a lift and shift, as we call it. After that comes what we refer to as the mobilized phase. From the mobilized phase, you're able to determine, okay, now I know what it is that I want to migrate. The mobilized tells me how I want to migrate it and what sort of requests and what sort of criticalities and on the critical path, if you will, with one dependency from one to the other. Finally, of course, we get to the actual migrate, the physical actual activity of shifting everything onto the AWS.
So very well said, Steve.
Mhm.
Rakesh, as a system integrator, as a system integrator, YASH has been doing this for many years.
Mhm.
What are your thoughts from YASH perspective? Rakesh, you're on mute.
Sorry. Ashish, when we work with the CXOs, so what I recommend or what we recommend to our CXOs is to establish a cloud office. So now this is something like a governing body that makes decisions on why, what, and how of cloud. So what just Steven said, right? That assess, mobilize, and actual migrate. So precursor to that is setting up this cloud office in terms of this is a joint collaboration between the key decision makers at their end, plus a strategic partner like YASH, who enable them in different sections of that the whole journey. Now, our role is to help them through cloud adoption framework, cloud reference architecture for assessment, even the cloud decision metrics, if they have not decided which cloud to move to, then the minimum viable cloud architecture, and eventually the governance and the management part of it. So it starts from there and takes to the entire journey in terms of defining the whole strategy and working through them and taking them to the cloud migration approach. Now, how do we enable them to achieve these things? So there are different tools or services which are available. So there are cloud native services from AWS, which enable a lot of these services, whether you do assess, mobilize, or migrate, or there are separate standalone tools which are also available in terms to enable them. Now, during assessment, the most important output is the dependency map to create the move groups or the work groups, which we call them, right? Because that's the planning phase, like Steven said, the slow is fast, right? So when you're doing the assessment, you create that dependency map and then define what the different move groups as part of your planning process and what are the peripheral services or interfacing or integrated with one particular application. They all create a particular move group, and that's how you define your migration work groups or workloads and create different waves of migration to do the actual migration part of it. Now, services, as I said, like app discovery from AWS or Cloudimize for assessment, the migration hub, server migration, all these services from AWS or standalone tools, they help the customer in covering that entire journey. So I think that's how we do it for all our customers.
Very interesting. So migration challenges are becoming a reality now. However, well thought out strategy and execution steps seems to be the key to the risk-free migration.
Yes.
How is AWS guiding its customers in implementing a successful strategy? What are the components involved? And Steven, is lift and shift the only way to go about it?
So that's a loaded question. Let me take that in piecemeal, right?
Yeah.
First of all, the actual, well, on the strategy perspective, to be honest, is the mechanization of how you perform all this thing. Planning. Now, that doesn't mean, I mean, we're stressing the importance of planning. We're not just simply saying, no, you get stuck in the world of planning and only planning. Utilizing a very capable partner, YASH is an excellent one, to actually facilitate this activity for you, having a CCOE, or what is also referred to as a cloud office in the end, is also viable. Now, everything, to be honest, really starts off with something called an MRA, okay, which is a migration readiness assessment. And that's on a per workload or per item or you know, whatever it is that you want to call it to actually shift onto cloud. Is it viable in the first place to even migrate? The output of the MRE will give you a binary yes, no, or potentially even will give you some recommendations of what needs to be improved and changed that can actually land successfully, that's what we want at the end, onto the cloud. Now, from there, we go back to the ones that I mentioned here, assess, mobilize, and then finally migrate. Again, and as exactly as Rakesh mentioned here, you can actually utilize many pieces of software that can actually facilitate this for you. We very strongly believe in automation. Imagine a scenario when you have 500, 600, perhaps 1,000 servers. These are not out of the ordinary. Even though the numbers sound large, actually that's quite commonplace. Humans can make mistakes. It's quite possible if something becomes very monotonous, if people will make mistakes by mistyping something or what have you. When you're automating these activities, then it'll the data capture is actually fast and automatic and it's computerized. Then you have less of a chance of actually making a mistake. It's alluding exactly to the point that Rakesh was making here of the various tools that are available for you. So AWS's perspective really is do an MRA, design your plans and actually waves basing back to the assess, mobilize, and then migrate, and use the tool where possible. Now, where possible as well, also please do utilize the expertise of an excellent partner. Again, YASH is at the forefront of this.
It's an essential factor when leaders are taking cloud migration decision. How is AWS platform helping companies think of going beyond cost, providing business value, enabling innovation, etc.?
Ashish, I'm going to kindly ask you to repeat the question. The first half was muffled. I didn't hear very well.
Cost remains an essential factor in decision making. When leaders decide to move to cloud, they look at cost as one of the biggest factors. How is AWS platform and AWS as an organization helping companies think about going beyond just the dollar value of the cost and providing business value?
So thank you very, very much for simply saying that going beyond the simple cost value here, like the dollar value at the end. You're absolutely correct. Everybody, of course, is very interested in minimizing the cost and the actual expenditure dollar value, as you mentioned it, in migrating to the cloud. Of course, if anybody can pay, if you can pay $2 for something and I can pay $1 for something for the exact same thing, I'd rather pay $1. This is commonplace. However, it is also very important for us to recognize that it's not simply the dollar value at the end. People sometimes forget the total cost of ownership, or what I would like to follow is business value, behind it. AWS, everything falls back on the well-architected framework. To be honest, for us, any sort of solution that's being hosted online on AWS is really following the 5 pillars that we have. And this is an excellent opportunity for me to invite everyone to actually spend an hour reading through the well-architected framework paper. I'll see if I can actually talk to Ashish to provide you with the direct link to it. But it's worthwhile. Now, it's a full, there are 5 pillars, and one of the full pillars on this one, on which they call well-architected framework resides, is something called cost optimization. Cost optimization really should not be understood as the pure dollar value. It's what kind of benefit can I have? If I may, a very quick example, if I have an architecture right now that's running at 100 and it's answering my challenges and providing me business value at $100, potentially I can squeeze it down to give me $70. But we sometimes forget that the amount of effort and the time required, because time is money, the time of my people being able to actually host and fix and manage and administer a solution online is potentially on the $100 value is an hour a week, but if I bring it down to $70, it's gone down to 1 hour a day. That's that's 6-7 times as much. Whereas if I only force it down to $90, yes, I have saved some money. Maybe not as potentially the dollar value says not as much. However, from the administrative side, it's gone down to 1 hour a month. Okay, so I've actually reduced it down to the quarter amount of time. On the whole, there's a lot of benefit behind this. So from AWS's side, it's actually providing you with the tools and artifacts to collect all this kind of data. I work with the channel team, of course. I manage the channel engineering, so to speak. So from my side, I always say, actually follow up with best practices that are coming in from excellent partners that can actually provide you with this one. And I'm always putting YASH at the forefront.
What you're suggesting is organizations should just not look at dollar value. They should look at operational performance. They should look at security, reliability, overall performance, sustainability, etc. And of course, it will also lead to the dollar value and cost optimizations. And that remains critical. That's also part of the well-architected framework.
Absolutely.
So cost should not be just dollar, dollar, dollar. It should be looking at holistically on where the organization customers save money.
Absolutely correct.
So when discussing cloud migration, most business leaders ask this question to us: how do they identify timelines, and what is the ROI? Is there a specific approach? Are there any tools available to calculate rough estimates? Rakesh, question to you: how can YASH help customers with this?
So Ashish, yes, the first part of your question about whether the tools are available or not, yes, there are tools available. And like Steven just said, so there are tools available which provide insights in terms of, okay, what would be the estimate when we do the real assessment, right? And the sizing and everything. So it starts from there only, the tools part which I just mentioned initially also. However, I would recommend using such tools, leveraging expertise from partners like YASH. Let me explain what I mean here. Right? I have seen customers, because see, everybody knows that yes, there are tools available, and then they try to run those tools themselves. And the biggest mistake what I have seen customers end up doing is that they try to derive the cost estimates without even understanding the full potential of cloud services. For example, now trying to arrive at cost estimation with configuration almost similar to the configuration which is on-premise, right? And then they're not aligning the current services with the native services or the new age services, technologies which are available on the cloud side. For example, like serverless computing or the PaaS services where the license cost goes down and all that stuff, right? So I think that's where the biggest gap I foresee when the customers try to do it themselves, and before even trying to decide that yes, they should move to cloud, they say, oh my God, the cost is way too high, I'll end up paying more, and the ball gets dropped. So the recommendation is, yes, there are tools available, but engage a partner like YASH who can kind of enable you and help the customer to arrive at a better ROI. That which service would be more suitable and how it will help them out, which service can be transferred to that, how that the old legacy servers or the technical debt part of it can be leveraged and modernized onto the cloud platform to give them a better ROI, for example. Now, coming back to the timeline part of it, yes. So again, there is, as I responded as part of my first answer, or even Steven said, like slow is fast, right? So the more you plan better, less it takes to migrate. So yes, biggest challenge is again planning migration, about the migration groups or the dependency maps, which I told as part of my previous example, right? Now, again, supporting cloud environments after the actual migration end up spending more and more. So again, alluding to the same example what Steven gave just now about $100 optimizing the cloud spend to 70, but the management cost is going high because you're spending too much by supporting your cloud environment internally, right? You don't have, with limited skills, I would not say you don't have skills, with limited skills, because you're hiring people with limited exposure, they don't know all the services across AWS, and that's how you end up not getting best ROI out of the cloud platforms, so to speak, right? So that's where, again, so as YASH, we don't leave our customers only up to the migration stage. We take them to the post-migration stage where we provide managed services. And as part of this, we not only support the day-to-day operations for them, but also help optimize their environment effectively. So what are the automation angles, like Steven mentioned earlier? The more you automate, the less errors occur in the environment. So even that's true for the operation side as well. So how you're provisioning your environment, how you are provisioning the instances on the AWS side, the EC2 or any other instance for that matter, I think those are the areas where we help our customers end to end. So starting from Cloud Office, going up to the end-to-end managed services towards the end, and while that optimizing, providing the best ROI out of the total cloud adoption, I would call it that way. So if I have to summarize, effective utilization of assessment tools, right sizing of landscape, leveraging new age technologies, and post-migration cloud spend optimization over a period of time will help them get the best ROI out of the cloud platform.
I'll borrow this marketing term from AWS where they say there's no compression algorithm for experience.
Yes.
So using with all what you mentioned and having a lot of experience or leveraging partners with experience would probably get a better insight into overall timeline and overall ROI rather than just look at what's the dollar value or how things are going to happen. Steven, what's your view from AWS perspective on this?
Rakesh actually mentioned his answer was actually gold. It really touched on a lot of the points that I personally would like to actually mention as well. So bravo, Rakesh, on that one. It actually speaks to the experience that we have right now from senior leadership at YASH as well. So it actually should add to the comfort level. It is worthwhile to mention, so the engineering answer I typically come back with, because at the end of the day, I'm an engineer, is to simply say, it depends. No two migrations are exactly the same and will conform to the same timelines, but you have an understanding of some items. For example, one of the tools that we have in the arsenal, the Quip of tools that we have at AWS is something called the Migration Evaluator, what historically was referred to as TSO logic, but that's the old name. We typically run that, okay, for the assess phase for about a month. From there, we have an understanding of the highs and lows of the workloads and so on that you have, and what's the resource consumption each one, from CPU to memory to storage to what have you. Now, the output of this one is to a point that Rakesh mentioned here, which is right sizing. Now, imagine the following scenarios. This server is not really being used at all. Okay, it's actually essentially, for all intents and purposes, just simply consuming electricity and is not providing me with business value. That term again. So, and we find several such in the data center, whether they're virtualized or they're actual hard, physical hardware like bare metal solutions in there. That's still what we refer to as kitlo, keeping the lights on. This might be an excellent time for us to diminish the footprint we have of servers here and actually consolidate them all. So one example might be a DNS server or what have you, something. I can't think of something right now at the moment, but still the answer is there. So this consolidation. In other cases, simply saying this server is oversized, shrink it down and you're still providing with better value and so on. So this is what we mean by right sizing. In addition to, of course, taking some advantage of some of the tools of, the servers types available for you on AWS. Some things that are not necessarily CPU heavy, but are RAM heavy, and they will provide you better insights and better price points for you running your own solutions on top of them. All that in its perspective is available for you right now. Now, on average, that one takes a month, but then again, of course, it depends from one thing to the other because you still have to have the migration readiness assessment and then the actual migration in of itself. So choose your own adventure is what we have it. Now, I mentioned the Migration Evaluator. That's a tool, of course, that's coming directly from AWS, and it's free to use, to be honest, for your own consumption and determination of what it is, how you want to proceed. But you're more than welcome to use any other tool that we have that can actually provide you the same business value of determination of your own workloads onto AWS. Choose your own adventure, as we like to call it.
Sorry, go ahead.
The last point I was going to simply say, it's also beneficial to have a post-migration plan, okay? Because we only taking off with, it's very commonplace to start off with a lift and shift, but it's exactly as Rakesh said, you're not necessarily taking advantage of everything that's available for you on the cloud. Okay, whether it's from an automation perspective, whether it's from an automatic, auto sizing, automatic scaling perspective, where you're actually looking at, modernizing, it's an excellent starting point to actually start taking advantage of resting your technical debt in this world of new technology in there. Okay, so I'll stop right there because I'm sure you have future questions on this one, Ashish. Please go ahead.
I'm excited with the aspect, and I'm just trying to map it to what you're saying. When I'm planning it well, I'm looking at my existing business processes like disaster recovery, my organization's RTO, RPOs, and hey, I might not want 100%. I might not want zero downtime kind of scenarios. If my business allows for it, I can downsize those servers rather than copy my data centers as is. So here am I not only am I adding business value to my entire thing, I'm also saving dollars directly. So
for certain, if I can interject with a statement here, because of the way AWS prices things as a pay-as-you-go model. Okay, to point to your point exactly here, if you shut down servers that you're not currently using, then you're not using it, so you're not paying for it. Okay, the dollar value goes down. The same can be applied for automatic scaling groups. For example, if we're looking at scaling the number of servers to respond to workload pressure and so on, they scale on a requirement need. If you need it, you're paying for it. If you don't need it, it'll automatically scale it down. And the same thing, you're not using it, why pay for it?
That's super exciting. And we have customers coming in from various industries like gaming, retail, etc. When you bring up so many technologies available, so many solutions are available, are they limited to any specific type of industries? And I'm talking more for perspective of compliances or governance standards required for different industries or security services from these industries, etc.
So certainly there's a requirement that's actually shared at the end by various industries here. So even though you might not have something that's industry specific, but every industry, for example, wants compliance storage, or if they want compliance security requirements and so on and so forth. So everyone can take advantage of the that level of compliance available to them from AWS services. FedRAMP is one, PCI DSS, if you're actually into the retail piece in there, that's another one. So you have that level of compliance available to you for across all industries. You're not limited to it. With AWS, because of the it's the most advanced when it comes to actually breadth and depth of services available to it from on all the clouds. As such, okay, you can and should be utilizing all these things. The way I think of it really is, you have the recipe with all the different components in there to bake your own cake. AWS is the flour plus the recipes in there to bake your cake solution here. So of course, you do always want to utilize someone to actually the recipe master. Okay, a partner.
Yeah, that's true. So if I have to say, you can be your own chef to create your own cake.
Exactly. Let's push the analogy.
Okay. And Steven, we heard that there's a new AWS region being launched in UAE H1 of 22. How will this benefit the customers, especially Middle East customers across region, and what does it mean for them?
You're absolutely correct. And the previous question was an excellent segue into this one here. So thank you very much for this one. You're correct. In H1 2022, okay, we're expecting to welcome online the new region in the UAE. So to continue the theme from the previous question here, when it comes to actual data governance and so on, everybody understands that we have to be compliant with the laws of the land. Okay, so if you have any PII data, if you have any financial data, if you have any kind of regulation, data governance, what have you, then of course, one added dimension that you need to require is that the services have to be within the borders of the country that you're serving. In this case, it's the UAE. So now everybody can be extremely happy and compliant on the fact that, yes, you're within the UAE. So everything is compliant right there and then. This is a benefit for all, the 10,000 plus, tens of thousands of customers, I should say, in the Middle East and North Africa region here, the likes of Careem, Fab, Emirates NBD, Anghami, if you're into that, Emirates Airlines, Fly Dubai, and so on and so forth, that are all available for us in the region. They're all very, very happy with taking advantage of the services that we have on AWS. Like again, with the broadest and widest selection, with the deepest, resources, in addition to also being in the UAE now. So they no longer have to be considerate of, data governance issues. But having said that, they're now on, AWS. It's the second region in the Middle East, with the first one being just up the Persian Gulf and Bahrain. It's choice now. If you have workloads that have a requirement to conform to these laws and regulations in the UAE, go ahead. If you don't, you're not limited to that. You're able to use your services anywhere in the globe, anywhere AWS has an actual region. So it could be Mumbai, it could be Bahrain, it could be Sao Paulo in Brazil.
Very interesting. So it allows customers to leverage both being next to their customer, that is, if they have especially B2C, and they want it in UAE, they can be closer to the customer in UAE. Plus, at the same time, they can be closer to their own customers, say in Brazil or in US, Europe, India.
You're absolutely correct. Choice is the name of the game here.
Excellent. And when I see this region being launched, we will have quite a few customers requesting to move basis the local governance laws, etc. in UAE. Rakesh, question to you. Does YASH have anything specific to offer to these customers? Is there anything that YASH offers to move them to UAE regions once they are launched?
Yes, Ashish, I think we are also excited hearing that, yes, AWS is coming up with a new region in UAE, right? And we understand that, yes, there'll be a lot of customers who would be keen on moving to this region. So we have exciting offers for our customers who want to take that advantage. And the offers are for all segment of customers, just as an example. So there could be customers who want to move the existing workloads from any other AWS region to the AWS UAE region for that matter. So there is a separate offer for them. Then there would be customers who want to move their workloads from any other cloud provider to the AWS UAE region. So that's again second option. So there are separate offers for those kind of customers too. And eventually, and not the least, I would call it, the customers who want to actually move their on-premise or the workloads to the AWS new region. So there are separate offers for them too. So I think I would call it that, yes, while the region launch is expected anytime in H1, but important that customers shall start planning now, because as we said, that slow is fast. Again, to repeat that. So it takes time to assess, it takes time to plan. So once you start thinking, you start talking about that cloud office thing internally, and then you start planning, and then you go out. So by the time the region launch happens, you will be quick to move to the cloud. So that's how it would be.
I like the fact that you say plan, 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 and once the region is announced, that time be the first one to start migrating, like that. Gentlemen, both of you have shared some valuable insights regarding different migration strategies, the innovation that comes with it. Rakesh, organizations are rapidly embracing the cloud to accelerate the business transformation. Can you share some examples how AWS and YASH are helping enterprises across industry verticals in realizing the business value, especially from the cloud migration initiative?
So Ashish, we have been at the forefront of our customers' AWS transformation journey for different verticals. So I have multiple such examples. But yes, if I have to just quote a few of them. So for example, so Amico is one such customer where we have worked with them right from the beginning to define the cloud strategy, the adoption, the cloud foundation, even the landing zone, what you call it, and the migration. And we are also doing the managed services for them, going up to the L1, L2, L3 support as part of the day-to-day operations. And we also migrated their SAP workloads onto the AWS cloud for this customer. So that's one. Then there is a dairy equipment manufacturer where we work with them on the cloud strategy. Again, the landing zone was created automatically. So like Steven said, automation to avoid errors, human errors, because landing zone is something which is like a foundation when you're creating a new house, right? When you're building a new house. So I would bring that analogy that landing zone for cloud is something similar to that. So it is the foundation for your cloud, you can say migration as such. So the more you automate, the way you automate, and you avoid errors, the more robust it is, right? And then eventually the networking and connectivity of embedded devices, where you call it as the milking sensors or the communication or the control module, with 24/7 accurate data collection for that matter. So it's just not only the infra migration, but I think going a step ahead in terms of bringing the embedded systems onto the cloud as such, bringing the data onto the cloud, and then doing a lot of, you can say, analytics using leveraging AWS services on top of the AWS platform. Next one example, I would call it as a technology-driven food company, where we collaborated again from the cloud office standpoint, the cloud strategy, architecture, by establishing the cloud engaged environment. A lot of like VPN, EC2, S3, CloudWatch, and snapshots. A lot of these services were leveraged in terms of, you can say, helping them move to the cloud. And eventually we created an encrypted network connection, which is secured and backing up the archiving of the SAP application data as well. So here again, the SAP was moved onto the AWS cloud. So various examples which I can bring in, but yes, I think these are the few ones which I can talk about. Now, again, in another customer interesting case I would like to bring up is a manufacturing hardware customer for access control, right? So they have different regions. Now, this is an interesting case because they are bringing up region by region. So they had workloads in Europe, they had workloads in US, they had workloads in APAC as well, and Middle East as well. So they are bringing up their workloads onto the cloud region by region, and there was a lot of planning, which is running up in different phases, taking one region at a time and then moving them to the cloud. So again, that's a little complex one. Bringing in different regions together, like Steven said, that's a broad horizon. You can leverage any of the AWS regions. So, and that's where even the content delivery part of it is taken into consideration, so that the people accessing the workloads in the local regions, they get the local content. They feel the content is coming locally that way. So I think a lot of different services, a lot of different examples, and the important aspect, we are doing managed services for most of them, in terms of providing them support on a day-to-day basis, optimizing their environment, giving them the best of ROI, so to speak.
So very interesting. And I see that not only are you managing the most critical piece of their system, which is normally SAP, but also looking at very innovative solutions, which goes right up to embedded. And of course, the complexity of rollouts happening across the globe and then intertwining them all together based on the customer's requirement and giving them all both operational security and reliability. And of course, the overall business value of Steven. I'm going to borrow that. I love that term. I'm going to borrow that. So
I think one more thing which I forgot. I think again, even the DevOps part, we are doing a lot of DevOps work for an AWS customer. So AWS DevOps on AWS, right?
Interesting.
So leveraging a lot of native services plus a lot of additional tools, bringing in to the AWS platform to enable them on the DevOps journey. So that's another area which I missed out, bringing in that example.
Super. So not only are we just migrating them, but you're also ensuring that they cross a maturity curve and the systems are automated, and the development also gets DevOps becomes part of the process. So that's very interesting. I'm going to open up the floor for questions from audience. I think I have the first one. The term that I get this question that you mentioned the term technical debt. The technical debt several times. What does that mean? Steven, I think that's for you.
Sure, no problem. So that's actually a good question. And thank you, Rakesh, for mentioning DevOps because they're actually really intertwined. Technical debt is the chance for you to modernize and take advantage of something new for you. Okay. And that level of modernization can come at, very large, on a broad spectrum of activities. Essentially, the short part of it is actually simply modernize. Now, this can come in several flavors, as we said. Okay, taking advantage of automation is one example of it here. So if you're running Linux servers, you don't necessarily have to have a very static environment that's running 10 servers, what have you. You can actually re-architect that as it's taking care of responding to the workload pressure that we mentioned earlier on under an auto-scaling group. So, and during the night when you don't really have much activity, it's responding, you have only one server that's there just in case something happens because you have some kind of workload happening at night. But of course, during prime time throughout the day, it automatically scales to get those 10 servers that you originally had. But then once it, end of day winds down and so on, starts shifting back again. So you have this accordion type motion in there. That's one type of vesting your technical debt. Another one might be, for example, licensing. If you, and we'll talk about Windows 2008, for example, which is really old, which in fact, Microsoft is no longer supporting that, okay? But you might take advantage of actually shifting this to servers to, Windows 2019 or something even newer. Another example might be taking those Windows servers that you have and then running them on Windows containers on something like ECS. Again, taking it, even further advantage of some new technical innovation and progression on there. So resting your technical debt really is to conform to what's actually available to you to make your life and provide easier and provide you with even greater business value at a lower price point typically and even less administrative aspects.
So modernize as well as when we are planning, they modernize it, the customers modernize it, use the opportunity to modernize this.
Definitely. And modernization also should not be too scary a term because you don't necessarily, it doesn't have to be a shotgun with modernizing everything all in one go. No, you can piecemeal it. Like I said, the simple example of Linux servers onto an auto-scaling group, your Windows server on ECS as a Windows container, what have you, and everything that comes in between. And again, always bank on experience, okay, and understanding and knowledge. An excellent partner comes in there, and Rakesh mentioned some very interesting examples that you guys were working on earlier on, and previous successful engagements. That speaks for itself, to be honest.
Sure. Thank you for that. I'll go on to the next question. We got the term cloud office. Can you please elaborate? Rakesh, I think this is for you.
Yes, I was expecting that because yes, when I mentioned cloud office, I was not very elaborative in the beginning. But yes, I think that's an interesting thing, okay, because that's a term which I keep talking. And in fact, like very recently, just a couple of weeks back, I was talking to one of the CIOs of a drilling company in UAE, and when we discussed about this concept of cloud office. So he was like quite excited. He said, yeah, I think it makes sense that way. Okay. So now let me elaborate. What does this cloud office means as such? Now, see, when you are trying to go to the cloud or when even you start thinking about moving to the cloud, so there are various aspects like operations, technology, the risk and compliance, and even the finance part of it, right? So because we have been talking about ROI, the business value, and all those areas throughout this, you can say, webinar. Now, so there would be different stakeholders at customer end too, because all the while what happens that sometimes customers engage a partner about talking about the cloud journey, and later on when the CISO gets involved or somebody from the risk and compliance team or the procurement. So there are a lot of unanswered things which are left at that stage. And then you have to go all the way back and then go back and do a lot of stuff and then come back to the stage where you were at that point in time. So it's imperative or it's important that you create that cloud office in the beginning where you have those key stakeholders who will be responsible to establish and manage the enterprise cloud strategy, the established cloud architecture and model, the reference architecture, security and compliance policies, appropriate compliance review checkpoints, the channels of communication, what should be the service catalog look like, and all that stuff around that. And then kind of the training and reskilling mechanisms, if at all you have to do that, or establish controls for cost and utilization of the cloud components and services. So all these things are the key, you can say, a stepping stone in terms of defining the whole journey towards the cloud transformation. And that's where we call it as a cloud office, where it's a joint collaboration between the customer end, the key stakeholders, plus a partner like YASH who help them through the entire journey.
That's interesting. Thank you for that. That's a very interesting answer, and that's something to really think about and implement for each customer on how do they want to go about with their cloud office per se. I think we have run out of time. Steven, I'll request you for your concluding remarks for today's session.
And okay, from my side, one, it was an absolute delight and pleasure to be here with YASH to present. Rakesh was an excellent co-presenter, and thank you, Ashish, for being a gracious host on this one. I think that the biggest message that we have really are three. Okay, well, several actually. I shouldn't limit it down to number. One is the new UAE regions coming up, and you can still take advantage of having 3 different availability zones plus all the different services that are available for you. And you can actually join tens of thousands of other successful cases in MENA and in the UAE. The second part here is when you're doing into migration, slow is fast. Plan up front. And then all surprises you have down the road when you're actually working on the actual migration will be pleasant surprises, okay, including possibly a very faster timeline, okay. A second one here is take advantage of automated tools, and definitely make sure that you're crutching on an excellent partner such as YASH to actually facilitate this.
Thank you for that, Steven. Rakesh, over to you.
Yeah, I think it was an interesting conversation, Ashish, and even I learned a few things what Steven said today, right? While I have been doing a lot of work around this area, but yes, as they call it, learning never stops, right?
Yes.
So it's a few learnings for me too, as part of this webinar, in terms of, yes, how do we go about it, and what are the benefits, and the region part of it, and then how it can benefit, and in more details, right? Plus, yes, I think from a customer standpoint, again, I would say, yes, try and attempt what you want to do, but please engage partners like us and to take you through the journey, because we will help you transform your cloud journey in a better way to give you the best ROI, the best compliances, and everything around that, right? And yes, again, I repeat, cloud office could be the beginning where you start with your own stakeholders and engage a partner like YASH to take it ahead, and then who will be responsible for end-to-end. So that way, all these stakeholders are aware that what is happening on the ground. Change management is effective in terms of moving to the cloud, because again, when you transform, change management is key within the organization. And that's where the communication part, as part of the cloud office, which takes care of all these elements, communicating with different stakeholders internally, how it has to happen inside the business side or the other stakeholders side. So I think these are some key points which I would again emphasize. And again, plan, migrate.
Thank you, gentlemen. Thanks for the time today. Really, it was an awesome pleasure speaking to you and learning from both of you. To the thanks for investing time with us. For those who registered and could not join, we will share a link. This would be made available by end of this week. And if you have any questions which we could not answer, sorry, we would definitely address them. Please send us an email at aws_info@yash.com. I'll repeat, aws_info@yash.com. Thank you for your time today.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, everyone.